Welcome, everyone. My name is Lori Jones, and I'm President and CEO of Avocet Communications. We're really excited to have you join our series today, which is Journey from a Series B to $1 billion buyout. Today's focus is going to be on choosing your value power. I invite you to ask questions throughout our entire session today. The more iterative it is, the better. And we appreciate your insights and questions throughout. Also, please know that we are taping today's session, and you will be sent a copy of the session probably early next week once we have a chance to just tighten up the video a little bit. So know that as we travel through the next 10 to 15 minutes, talking about what the value power is, and then again, we welcome those questions afterwards. So as we move along here, and I actually can decide how best to move a slide. Here we go. So consumer behavior is changing so much right now. There are so many different components that are causing that change. But what we know as marketers is consumer behavior changes B2B buyer behavior as well. So how we hone in on that and really begin to fine tune our message is something that we're going to be talking about today. Companies must go from this very product-driven mindset to truly a customer-centric mindset and strategies and approaches to really achieve growth and moreover relevance in the grand scheme of things. To move toward this centricity that is so important within the buyer mindset, we call it life centricity. Executives need to see their buyers very, very differently. They need to understand the complex external forces that impact them day in and day out. These external forces are massive, by the way. The average person interacts with 6,000 brands a day, and the average buyer has to interact with a brand 26 times before making a buying decision. So the importance of really honing in on your value proposition is really important. How ultimately do you cut through the clutter? You don't do it by blending in. You don't do it by leading with features. You don't do it by confusing your buyer. You don't do it by landing in the sea of sameness. How you do it is by deploying innovative positioning strategies that truly do differentiate. So then, how do you choose your value power? This model, by the way, is used by the nation's top 5 consultancies, the McKinseys of the world. And it's something that we've started to use as an agency the last 10 years because it is such a good building block to messaging, to campaigns, to strategy across the board. Value power can help you focus and prioritize. It helps you establish a stronger ROI and efficiency across channels. It helps you empower your team, develop better customer understanding, which means you're building out loyal customers. And it helps you communicate with your entire team a stronger innovation map and go-to-market strategies. And then, of course, based on the stage your business is in, it helps you develop those investments, those industrial investments, those Series B investors, whatever the case might be. So today's discussion points are going to be really defining your brand value. How ultimately can you as a brand begin to hone in on this and really understanding what is going to matter to your customers? We'll provide you some insights on how you can narrow down your approach with 4 key areas. I know it sounds crazy because there are probably a gazillion out there that we want to be able to focus on, but those gazillion typically fit within 4 key areas: price, quality, customer intimacy, and innovation. We're also going to help you lay your path forward and provide you some examples on other brands and how they've narrowed their approach and some of the successes that they've achieved. Now, I also wanted to put this slide up to share with you. We have been working since September with this Q&A series, and each month we are providing you basic and valuable insights on positioning. Everything that we're talking about ties into how you position your company and your brand in the mindset of the consumer or the B2B buyer. These are categories that we have 10 to 12 strategic levers under each category. And today's focus, of course, is really on value. So know that as we walk through everything today. So defining your brand value. So the majority of brands, again, you'll hear me talk about this a lot in all of our sessions, by the way, they try to be all things to all people. And what happens when you run into that situation and you position yourself that way, it confuses the customer. Again, 6,000 messages a day, interacting with a brand 26 times. If you're marketing correctly, that 26 times can be reduced. If you're not marketing correctly, that 26 times can be hundreds, in order to really help the customer understand who you are, what you do, and why they should care. So by defining your brand's superpowers, you'll be able to define your brand's value powers. This allows your customers and your clients to know what to expect from your company. So what are your value powers? Again, this tool is used by a lot of consultancies across the United States and dare I say worldwide. And it really helps us capture how we show up in the mindset of our buyer. So what we like to do is start out with a competitive analysis, and we'll get into that in a little bit here. But when you are conducting a competitive analysis, there are going to be several points of parity, those items that are table stakes, and points of differentiation that you will be able to explore along this research. And what we want you to be able to do is take a deeper dive into these 4 areas: price, customer intimacy, quality, and innovation. What we know is there are going to be price leaders that might be the lowest price, or they might be the highest price in a market as well. These price leaders are pursuing scale in volume. And again, we'll give you some examples of that in a little bit here. And then this can also, as I said, be the highest premium price. It could be a luxury brand like Gucci or Tiffany or something like that. But in order to be that luxury brand, with the exception of few brands like Tesla, you definitely need to be that premium brand before you go to launch yourself, or a premium brand to launch as a premium brand price. Customer intimacy is something that's very, very interesting in today's brands. We want customer intimacy brands to be obsessed with wowing your customer and striving to give them the exact experience that is very, very different from someone else that you've researched. By the way, a great place to research also are competitive reviews. As you're going through competitive reviews, what are you finding out about your competitors' price, customer intimacy, quality, and innovation? Moving into quality, this is where no matter what, you are the best at your product or service, but it's got to be proven. You can't just say I'm the best. You can't just say, trust me. Quality must be proven. So if you're going to choose quality, what are the points of difference within that category that nobody else can own, that nobody else can ultimately push out? And we've got to be able to hold on to that category for a while, because guess what? The competition will be following. So and then innovation. Innovation is something that's really very unique here, right? Because you want to be able to offer something that nobody else is doing. Again, think Tesla. True differentiation and focus is on an unmet need or a burning platform to drive demand. Now, there's a caveat to all of this. In our own business, we provide bold ideas that help companies scale, right? They have to be innovative, because innovation is a criteria in which all competitors are judged against. We do not choose innovation as one of our key tenets here because it's table stakes. It's almost a point of parity. So that's a really good example of how ultimately you want to think about this when you're trying to place your own brand in this category or into one of these categories. Now, what you'll find out when you are conducting the competitive analysis is you want to be able to place the competitors. Each one of these numbers represents a competitor, by the way, and you want to place them in a 4-quadrant area that is based on the price, customer intimacy, quality, and innovation that I've just been talking about. And you're going to see where these customers are going to kind of lump and follow. So with this example that we've got here, you can see that the price and customer intimacy is an area that several brands are focused on. Ask yourself why you would focus in those areas. The 6,000 messages that I mentioned, guess what? It's going to have to be more than that. The 26 times, it's going to have to be more than that. So when you move yourself into the categories that there's less competition in this situation, we've got quality and innovation. That is where you can really cut through the clutter and differentiate yourself in the mindset of that buyer. So before we move on to how you might fine-tune your approach with this, we're going to go through some pretty deep examples. Does anyone have any questions on the basic tenets and why ultimately this sort of an approach can really help you catapult your brand?
Lori, when you're doing that competitive analysis, what are you looking at? Are you going to competitors' websites? What else are you looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. Whoever asked it, I can't see you. But anyways, so yes, you want to be able to, and that's actually some great content that you can pull up too, by the way, is conducting a competitive analysis. We touched on it briefly in our September Q&A, and we're going to dive deeper into that in an upcoming Q&A as well. But yes, you're always going to start with the website, by the way, but then you want to take a look at like a G2 crowd. If you're B2B brand, that is a great summation of reviews for B2B brands. If you're a consumer brand, go into Google and Facebook and all these other areas. By the way, G2 crowd, or I should say Facebook and Google are great B2B experience and competitive analysis areas as well. But G2 crowd really takes product to test, and that's the key difference between them. But you also want to take a look at, speaking to some of your customers, what have they experienced with the competition, even from a pitching standpoint. Take a look at some of the great companies out there that are doing experimental insights on product comparisons, some of the research companies out there. Analysts are great areas. Press. Take a look at the press the company's pushing out. What are their key focus areas, and are they nodding their head into anything in the future? Those are just some ideas off the top of my head. The most important thing, though, is as you're gaining this insight and you're really culling this down, build a grid. Sheets or Excel can be your best friend. Build a grid with the categories, and you can start to plot it out and then ultimately move them into a quadrant that you see here. Thank you for that.
Lori, I have a quick question too. At the beginning of the webinar, you talked about the difference between being product-driven and customer-centric. So can you just real quickly talk about the difference between customer centricity and customer intimacy? Because obviously I think those are two different things.
Yeah, they really are. So customer intimacy is ultimately how you behave with the customer. So it's that one-on-one relationship that you've got more control over. And customer centric is the DNA of the brand and how you go to market. So is everything, so we talk a lot at the agency about people first. Are we talking about what we do, the product, what the product does, or are we talking about how that product benefits the customer? That is the key difference here. And dare I say, customer-centric and customer intimacy are equally important, because the last thing you want to do is land a piece of business through being very, very customer-centric and then not connect the dots with customer intimacy. That's a great
Okay.
question. Thank
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so how are we going to fine tune our approach here? So guess what? It always starts and it repeats with value. So this is where we really get into value planning, right? And guess what? I bet you all felt that you were going to be able to keep all those four components that we just talked about and put them into all of your messaging. That is not so. What we want you to do is pick two. So based on everything that you've just learned from the brand, again, think back to Hannah. That was such a great question. Think back to that. So 6,000 messages, 26 times to interact with the brand before making a buying decision. If you are price, quality, innovation, and customer centric or customer intimacy with everything that you're pushing out, what is it going to do? It's going to confuse the buyer. They're going to shut you down. They're not going to take a look at anything. So focus is the name of the game here. So what we do with these pick two combos is focus on those areas that you can be very, very successful. The example that we used in the previous slide was quality and innovation. So if we take a look at quality and innovation here, the focus is on form, fit, function, and delivery to the customer. Price is naturally a premium, no matter what. Remember what I said about our example with innovation. So we're not going to talk about innovation. So price is naturally a premium, but customer service and investment varies dependent upon the competition. Some typical risks here could be cost is not a primary consideration in the market it develops, and unforeseen competition or shifts major investments, and they can be lost from a profitability standpoint. So no matter what, there's a rub, with quality and innovation and how it affects price, right? And there could be a rub on customer intimacy and quality and how it affects innovation. So what we're trying to get across in this slide and this great detail here is what the stereotypical definition is, and then what some of the typical risks are. Does anyone have a question or a call out that you'd like me to talk a little bit more here? I know that this is a bit of an eye chart, but what else would you like to talk a little bit more about on this page?
Lori, will you send this out in the downstream email or the recap email, replay email?
Yeah, okay. We will. We'll send this out. As a matter of fact, we'll send the deck out, the entire deck out, along with the video, of course, so that you can take a look at this and really study it, because it is, a lot of information. Let's take a look at quality and customer intimacy. This is an area that you really want the customer experience to be everything. Think Zappos, right? The business wants to hear, wow, you're the best, nothing better. This can be very difficult from a growth standpoint because you aren't necessarily, growth can be difficult beyond a point because there aren't enough customers that simply want the best or the best value. You've really got to instill that in the mindset and shift the mindset of the buyer audience. Lack of any innovation can eventually become the Achilles heel here as well. So this is where, in the case of Zappos, you've seen a lot of brands, they continue to innovate as the business grows. And it becomes a part of their customer intimacy from a quality standpoint, new ways of buying, 24-hour delivery, whatever it might be, which is innovation, but it ties back to customer intimacy. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on here. This is an example of a brand in the med tech area that we are working with right now. And we've gone through this and we've defined key attributes and areas with price. So there are a multitude of low-cost brands. They're a dime a dozen with this particular product that we're marketing. And in healthcare and medical device, by the way, they've got a very negative reputation for high prices. So guess what we're not going to do? We're not going to focus in on price with this particular brand. Quality, so when we were doing the competitive analysis on quality, we know that the industry reporting, so this is a product that is a med tech device that actually reports on something very, very important for the health a quick test that is, it reports on the health of a patient. And the reporting that is out there from a competitive standpoint is really, really bad. So we know that there's higher quality output opportunity for our brand, which ultimately has the best reporting in the marketplace. Customer intimacy. Competitors in this space are banking on moving. So they move testing sites, and they're kind of like just all over the place. You're herded like cats. So there's no customer intimacy that can really be gleaned from that. Innovation, the process is not unique, and the methodology in which we're testing is not unique. So based on these 4 areas and the insights that I provided you, where do you think this brand should focus on the pick 2 methodology?
Hi, Lori, it's Sunshine. Probably on the quality piece.
That's exactly right. So
Phew.
yeah, way to go. I've got a gold star for you. So we're focused on quality and customer intimacy. Those are the pick 2 that we wanted. And guess what? It does not mean that that you're not talking about what an innovative product this is. It just means that you have an opportunity to focus in areas where you can succeed. And it's not the table stakes that we talk about so much. So let's take a look at how you can, some examples of this. And I'm going to test you a little bit further with some real large brands in the marketplace and see ultimately how these all come to play. The other thing I will tell you very quickly is these are large, massive brands in the marketplace. Guess what? Every single one of these, if you reverse engineer their marketing, every single one of these brands is taking a look at the value tools that we've laid out on the table today, and you would be able to reverse engineer and say, okay, FedEx, they're focused on this and this. And so if they're using it, why shouldn't startup brands, Series B brands, or very, very influential, local franchise brands, why shouldn't they be focusing on stuff like this? Okay. So this is Southwest Airlines, and this is going to be just a fun interactive area where we're going to test some of what we've learned today. So if you think of Southwest Airlines, their operational excellence is something that's very, very important to them. And they offer a no-frills service, and their quality shines through their on-time. Well, this is kind of funny. They're based on what just happened over Christmas, right? But they'll get back to this, I promise. So where do you feel in that pick 4 combo, or in the pick 2 combo, where do you feel Southwest is landing?
Quality and price, maybe?
That's right. That's fantastic. I don't know who that was, but that's exactly where they're landing. Okay, let's take another example.
Well, and I would add that's why they disappointed people so much, because, over the holidays, because that branding was so strong. And
if it was American Airlines, we would have expected it, right?
that's right.
Or United. And
Right.
That is such an incredible comment. And it's so important here. So if I'm the communications team for Southwest Airlines, what am I now doing? The minute everything starts to happen, again, I love reverse engineering things. If you take a look at how their CEO stepped up and owned it, what does that have to do with price and quality? He's owning it. It's such an important thing for him to be able to maintain that market position. So their communications team happens to be brilliant. And they handled it very, very well. But getting back to that, instead of saying, okay, now is the time that we've got to try to manage customer intimacy, isn't necessarily the right thing. You've got customer intimacy moments in all this. You've got to manage it correctly, but they've got to be able to get back to quality and price. Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. Okay, this is Apple. Anyone want to just gut reaction on where you feel Apple might be?
Innovation and quality?
Yes.
That's what I was going to say too.
Yeah. So they're driven by innovation and staying at the bleeding edge of consumer electronics. They create products you don't know you need yet, but because it has Apple on it, we're going to get it right. Price can be a premium. We'll wait in line for 72 hours to buy $1,000 phone. And although they care about customer service, they are not intimate. They typically handle good customer service through ensuring product quality. Any reflections on that before we move to another one?
I give them a little credit for customer intimacy with their Apple stores.
Yep.
Because they are generally able to connect with you one-on-one, but you're right, maybe not with the brand necessarily.
Yeah.
In a different way,
Yeah. And a lot of this is another Q&A as well. It has to do with category strategy, right? So their category strategy is always bringing innovation to the table. They're known for that. They better have the quality or they're not going to be able to charge the premium price. Yeah, there's really unique ways to take a look at that. Okay,
Lori, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
When you pick your two, I'm assuming that sometimes those two change, right?
That's a great question.
Depending on what's going on, like the Southwest example you gave, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with that ownership mindset. So in the mindset of the consumer, what do you want the lasting mindset to be regarding who that brand is? When you go to buy an airline ticket, you know that you're going to get the best deal on Southwest Airlines, and that you are going to just, have a lot of excitement on the airplane based on how they might, give you all the training on, the exit plans and stuff like that. But it has a lot to do with ultimately those two components. When the brand deviates, yes, it can be a crisis communication situation. It can also be that you fumbled a product launch, right? Either due to timing or quality. So you have no choice at that point in time to make sure that quality is very, very important and that you're focused on ultimately delivering products that customers need, know, and want. So it does move back and forth between the two, but how you would create very broad awareness is by focusing in a couple areas and not confusing your buyer.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you. Okay, this is Salesforce, by the way. And this one, I think it's a little bit trickier. What do you think your focus areas are for Sales First? And I can read you a little bit. They are obsessed with the core process of solution development, right? Results management and the relationship management that they have. They delegate decision-making to employees who are close to the customer. Their management systems are geared toward creating results for carefully selected, nurtured clients, and their culture embraces specific rather than general solutions and thrives on deep and lasting relationships.
Customer intimacy and innovation.
Yes, way to go. So as we're walking through these examples and you're taking a look at your own brand, can you maybe isolate that you're trying to be all things to all people, maybe too often, or that if you were to focus, what that might look like from an awareness standpoint that would cause less confusion for your buyers? Think back to the early days of the pitch decks and where you really needed to focus on intriguing the investment teams that were working on providing insights there. That is what this is all about. And by the way, I think it's really interesting. As you know, we have worked with over 1,200 growing brands, most of them starting out at Series A, and we kind of interject ourselves into their Series B and beyond. And there is no doubt about it that these emerging brands are constantly changing across the platform here, and where they might start out ends up changing because of the competitive landscape around them, or the product, or the fact that their product is just getting better. So ongoing competitive analysis is another thing I'll lead you with, is something very, very important here. Just a couple more insights here. This is Home Depot. So Home Depot, where do you think that their focus is? Imagine yourself walking through one of their stores and experiencing what you do. What is their focus?
Probably price and quality,
Okay.
or maybe, I don't know. I'm a Lowe's fan.
Well, that might be theirs, but it's price and customer intimacy. So what's unique about Home Depot is they're focused on, so they carry the same products that Lowe's does, right? So it's not innovative or anything like that. And guess what? Price is something that's very, very important to both of those brands, but how they differentiate is focusing on a different type of customer, a DIYer. So they're focused on DIYing. Those customers are trying to save money, right? So that's another way that price can be a go-to strategy for you. They continually change products and services in a way that they can offer the best total solution. And guess what? Every man and woman who wears that orange apron in Home Depot, I almost said Lowe's, Hannah, in Home Depot knows a lot about what they're talking about. Most of those individuals, by the way, they focus on 2 aisles. That's it. They have floaters that can talk about all products, but their team members focus on 2 aisles of insights so that they can better answer the questions that a customer might have. What a great, great example of customer intimacy, right? Okay, last one is Amazon. So this one I think is pretty unique on a lot of different levels. Any guesses here?
All of them.
I know, but they focus on price and innovation. And so when you think of Amazon, they consistently innovate on their value proposition. They're just, now releasing pharmaceutical solution. They started out as books. So they're constantly trying to stay ahead of, look at grocery, look at all these very unique items. And you can buy products on Amazon, typically cheaper, although their fees, they just announced last week that their fees are going to be going up than a lot of brick and mortar stores, and still get it delivered free. So that's another example, their AWS solution, their entertainment solution. They've got all these different solutions. I mean, they're trying to ultimately get consumers and businesses to shop from one entity instead of several. So that's what I have for all of you today. Any additional questions that you might have for me?
So Lori, this goes back to, I think, a little bit of a previous question. Obviously, you pick 2, and that's kind of what you stand on. At what point does that evolve? Does that evolve? How do you know when it's time to maybe shift based on, competition? Or can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. That's such a great question. And I think a lot of companies out there, in business development, we refer to whale hunting. So as you go after the largest pieces of business that can feed an entire company for a year, you're going to run into smaller pieces of business like a seal or a minnow that might feed a company for a week. So we refer to that as whale signs. So what is a whale sign of a company changing that we might need to learn a little bit more about them so that we can, know ultimately what it is that we need to do to attract them from a sales standpoint. The same thing applies with positioning. So what is the sign in the marketplace, or the sign from the product development team, the sign from the customer insights that you were receiving from your customers, from the competitive analysis, really everything along that positioning model that I shared with you earlier, that you can do to make sure that you understand when you might need to pivot. If there's anything that's true in business, it's that pivots happen. whether or not the pivots are happening every couple of years for you based on how technology is changing what you do, or if you are pivoting based on your product getting better or a competitor going out of the marketplace. Those are all things to consider. But the most important thing is that you're tracking it. Let the pivot happen organically with the correct signs that you are gaining insight in from the marketplace.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, with that, I really appreciate the interplay today and all the great questions. Thank you very much. Again, we are going to be sending this video and the deck out to you the beginning of next week. And I'll also let you know that on March 1st, we're going to have our next Q&A. And it's ultimately how you prioritize stakeholders. So there's so many different buyer mindsets. Most companies have between 12 and 15 stakeholders. How you prioritize those into a go-to-market strategy, again, without trying to be all things to all people, is where we're going to spend some time next month. And we definitely hope that you all can join us then. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you.